Welcome back. This is still the POLITY reaching you live from Abuja. Now, June 12 wasn't always Democracy Day. It used to be May 29th, which coincided with the inauguration of President Olusegun Obasanjo as the president of Nigeria. But sometime in 2018, the immediate past president, President Muhammadu Buhari, changed that date to June 12 and to commemorate or to coincide with the election in 1993, which many have deemed or called one of Nigeria's freest and fairest elections that saw the emergence of Chief MKO Abiola emerging as president. He was never sworn in and he would never be president as that election was annulled. Now, the date has been shifted to June 12, but we have experienced over 2 decades of democracy, counting from the inauguration of President Olusegun Obasanjo up till now, and perhaps till infinity, as they say. So today we'll be taking a look at democracy through the ages, particularly in Nigeria, how far we've come, where we've been, and where we hope to be. Joining me now to do some justice to this topic is Dr. Law Mefo. He is a social scientist and is also a policy analyst. Welcome to the program. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting me.
Thank you.
And happy Democracy Day.
Wish you same, sir. Thank you so much. All right. It's Democracy Day, like we've said. So let's do a little bit of looking back at the times. How far would you say we've come, democratically speaking? I think let's start with today, this morning, the speech by the president. You also spoke of this, so I'd like to get your thoughts. First, just a basis. How far you think we've gone? How would you rate Nigeria, on a scale in terms of how democratic we've become?
We can't deny that we are still in a democracy. That in itself is a measure of achievement. And but how democratic is Nigerian democracy is a different question altogether. And an answer to that question will depend on where one is coming from. For me, weighed on the balance, between the continuum, civil rule, and democracy, I believe that Nigeria is still more of a civil rule than a democracy. And the reason I say that is also obvious. When you look at where we are coming from and the struggle of the people to decide who governs them, has always been, rolled back, truncated by the military, by the people who constitute themselves into the so-called leadership class, the elites. Engage in what I call conspiracy. Conspiracy to achieve 2 things. One is capture the state power, and then the other is dispensing, favors as they would wish. What they do to retain power is exactly why democracy is not improving in Nigeria. They do not allow the democratic process to play out to the fullest. Take, for instance, the 2023 February 25 presidential election. You can see how the process was sort of halted somewhere along the line, and making the outcome to be so contentious, making the 3 leading presidential candidates to lay claim to victory. If Nigeria were a democracy, who won would be obvious to everybody. And that was the intendment of the Electoral Act 2022, is to enable a process that will be so transparent, be at par with what you may call best global practices, democratic practices as it were. you cannot say that we achieved that in the most recent presidential election. However, we have a president-elect that is now sworn in as president of Nigeria, and he has fully assumed office. And he has started discharging the responsibilities of the president and commander-in-chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The facts are there. And today we listen to his Democracy Day broadcast. He paid a tribute to those who made so much sacrifices, especially those who, paid the supreme price, particularly MK Abiola, the wife Kudirat Abiola, and of course Rewanu, and a number of others who, if I would add, I want to mention some unsung heroes like Chima Obani and a number of others. I don't know whether to say that their deaths have actually fetched us democracy, because the people who are holding on to the reins of power are renewing and regenerating themselves. You will see the return of former heads of state, military, heads of state as presidents of Nigeria. We have had at least two of them in the person of General Olusegun Obasanjo and General Muhammadu Buhari. Such transformation and how they handle their power, it never really allowed democracy to blossom in our clime. But they didn't just force themselves upon Nigeria. They colluded with the political elite to achieve their transformation from a military to civilian leaders of Nigeria. On the whole, therefore, I think that we shouldn't despair. Democracy is work in progress. It's not a dash, it's a marathon. And if you check the successive elections, there are tendencies towards improvement. But you may not say that such improvements really constitute the kind of total transformation of civil to pure democracy. Not yet. Not yet to whom.
I don't know if you can perhaps do a little bit of delineation or explanation when you say civil rule and democracy.
You see, civil rule is a rule, by people who are civilians. You understand that? But what they do, and how they came to power may not be democratic. If you vote and your vote does not count, it's not democracy. If you have a process, a system of election that does not allow transparency, for votes, you saw the beautiful innovations brought in by INEC, in the just concluded general elections, including presidential elections. The electronic component, for example, the issue of beavers, used for verification, authentication of voters, and even used to capture results, to ensure real time and all that. It's a process. It's a process, but it was not fully consummated. And like I said before, you can see that if we had allowed, total consummation of the 2022 Electoral Act, we would have achieved democracy. We would have achieved the full democratic election. We would have. I say so because the process would have been so transparent to the point that real-time uploading of results from polling units would enable whosoever, even non-Nigerians from anywhere in the world, to monitor, the dropping, the results that we are dropping. You can do the computation by yourself, and then you can see that you can arrive at who won without even waiting for a neck. You saw that of Turkey. We all saw it, how it went, the electronic component, real time. As people were voting, the computations were coming real time. And we saw how Edoga, was forced to a rerun, and how he eventually emerged. It was transparent. There would be no need for anybody to go to tribunal. If that had happened, there would have been need for this rancor going on in the country. And so for me, you can say that we have started the democratic process, but we are not yet there. We are not yet there. It's a journey.
Right. I believe that's fair enough. At the start of your, when you started talking, you mentioned that at the very least we are still in civilian rule, so that's something to be. I wonder, what do you think are the factors for that? Do you think our political class is savvy enough to avoid the pitfalls of military taking over, like we've seen in some African countries specifically, and even in African countries where there is still civilian rule, we see somehow one key figure who managed to clinch power when democracy began in their country, clinching it all the way till they pass away and then they hand it over. But we saw that even in our own climb here, there were reports that President Obasanjo attempted a third term, and he didn't see the light of day. So is this a kudos or a plus to our political class, or is something else responsible?
Our political class, I believe, is not quite mature. It's not statesmanly enough. Their concern is essentially how to get to power, and not necessarily to grow democracy. They have been essentially responsible for the kind of democratic experience and experiment we have had. They work very hard on how to beat the process, subvert the system, even the laws. Because you will see them actively compromising democracy by buying votes, unleashing thuggery, buying over support of the security agencies and all that, monetizing the process. And you will also see the so-called national working committees of political parties subverting the will of the people by imposing candidates, many of who did not even go through the primaries to pick the party tickets. We all saw it. We saw the case of the outgoing Senate president, how he returned to the Senate, and all that. And there are many examples like his. He's not alone. So others who passed through almost the similar process, including Akpabio, people who contested for president and still ended up in the Senate. That is not democracy. So something is fundamentally wrong. Our political class are not working on deepening democracy. They are not, because they are the ones subverting even the existing laws. So when you say INEC, playing to the gallery and appearing to deliberately subvert even their own guidelines, you will see that the political class are the beneficiaries. In other words, they are the ones even ensuring that INEC does not do the work according to law. And so I think the statement made by one a political thinker that statesmen think of the next generation while politicians think of the next election is quite true. So if you look at our political class, you don't see enough statesmen that can really stand there for democracy and for the country. You don't find them. Just look around. From the chancellor to the president, you will see that you don't find a president who is prepared to say, look, if I lose, I lose. That is democracy. That is the will of the people. It has happened in Nigeria only once. When Jonathan said, look, let the process play out. If I lose, I lose. Only Jonathan has done that in annals of Nigerian history. So if you have a president that says that my re-election is a do or die affair, he's prepared to survive the process. And we have had the experience in this dispensation. So you can see that, democracy has been subverted, you know, and to change it, and really get democracy to work so that the will of the people would prevail. You know, what I mean by the will of the people prevailing is the people being allowed, at least for once, to decide who would be their leader. You know, let votes count. And votes cannot count until they are really counted real time, you know, transparently, so that everybody will be part of the counting. That's the issue here.
Right.
But when you count in the polling units and they go to the ward collation centers and change those figures, you can see that the counting, you know, votes is no longer counted.
Right. I'd like to ask, how do you think we can break out of this cycle? Because it's almost like I want to, you know, use an example on the international scene. Take the issue of racism. Yes, it required black people and the people who were subjugated to rise up, but to an extent, it also required some persons within the class of subjugators to also join in that fight. Otherwise, it was almost a losing battle. So, as it is now, it's almost as though the very people who are causing the process to be undemocratic have the most power to make it democratic. So, how do we get there? You know, how do we break the cycle?
That's the you know. First, I bemoaned the obvious absence of statesmen, you know, true genuine patriots, those who really want to stand there for the country and stand for democracy. We don't find it, and it will take such persons, the other side, what I'm saying, to get certain things really done. Even you know, the current president, whether he's removed or stays, even before then, is already doing certain things that are irreversible, indelible. That means he has his own term, he has his own time, and he's trying to deploy his powers as president to address certain issues. If perchance he believes that there is need to have true democracy, you understand what I'm saying? He will instigate a new electoral act. You understand what I'm saying? That will provide consequences for violations of you know, extant provisions that are clearly violated in the process, particularly Section 64, subsection 4, that says the collation officer, the returning officer, shall do his job subject to verification and confirmation of results uploaded from the polling units. Now, there is need to provide consequence for such violation. So these are the kind of reforms that we need to bring us closer. In other words, when you clearly provide consequences for those actions, for example, providing very long prison time, you know, for people who, returning officers at any level, from ward, local government, state to national Abuja here, right? Providing long, for example, you provide for a minimum of 20 years for any returning officer that mutilates the result, that calls, you know, the wrong results and stuff, deliberately, willfully. There are no such consequences directly attached to certain extant and express provisions. And until you get to that level, where the law itself will tie the hands of the operators, you will always get this kind of charade called elections in Nigeria. And that is why democracy is not taking roots. A lot of people are apathetic. The apathy they exhibit towards democracy, particularly elections in Nigeria, is born out of this experience. Experience that you're coming out to vote under rain and shine is a wasted effort, because somebody is waiting for you at the ward collation center to write what he wants, and there will be no consequence. So if you want us to break away from it, the law, tie the hands of the operators of the law. But as long as you leave it open-ended, do you understand what I'm saying? It becomes a moral provision. Because what that means is that the Constitution says that INEC shall determine how to. Do you understand what I'm saying? If the Constitution says INEC shall determine, now in their own guideline, they said they will base everything on real time. If you follow what happened at the tribunal, just yesterday or so, where the judges were treated to the video clips of where Professor Mahmood was swearing that there must be real transmission, there must be real time. Do you understand that? We are not talking about promises here. We are talking about, the law providing consequences for Mahmood and his successors deviating. Consequences for deviating, I can see. And that is why he can laugh at Nigerians. If there are consequences and the matter is brought before the court, even the judge's hands will be tied by the law. Because there is nothing you can do. The law has expressly said that if you deviate, 20 years.
All right, let's quickly talk about the law now.
Yes.
There was a statement in President Tinubu's speech today that has caused a little bit of controversy and different explanations. I'll read out that particular statement now and why it has caused some issues. He says, it is about the rule of law and vibrant judiciary that can be trusted to deliver justice and strengthen institutions. Now, this is the part that caused issues specifically. It has become imperative to state here that the unnecessary illegal orders used to truncate or abridge democracy will no longer be tolerated. And people in the third branch of government, the judiciary, they're saying, is this a threat? Saying that unnecessary, quote unquote, illegal orders used to truncate or abridge democracy will no longer be tolerated. And they say this is coming from a president who has a case in the judiciary at the moment, which is seeking to, remove him from seats. And he makes a statement that orders to truncate democracy will not be tolerated. Illegal orders, he says. Do you think there's any force about this?
In a presidential democracy, you have three arms of government. And each headed by different individuals. He is heading the executive arm of government, and not the judiciary. And that's exactly what we are talking about, Nigeria being in a civil rule and not in a democracy. It's a threat. You can't determine for the judiciary which order is frivolous. You're not in a position to do so because you're not a judiciary officer. You are the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. If you have such observations, you still have to submit it to that arm of government. Do you understand that? To determine it. And if there are practices you believe are not in order, I had expected the statement to contain proposals. Do you understand what I'm saying? That look, the practice, the practice direction of the Nigerian judiciary at the moment needs to be retouched. What that means is that as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, he will be able to propose, to the legislature some amendments to some of these things. And of course, the CJN, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, as the chairman, as the head of the judicial arm of government, will also be from behind the scene discussions that we don't need to be private to issue fresh guidelines. Yes, I agree with him that some of these orders are very cool. For example, look at what is happening in Abga. We don't know whether the outgone Victor Oye was the authentic chairman of Abga until he left, or is it Njoko? Do you understand that? We need to, such things, such controversies ought not to linger. And it's lingering because of the kind of problems we have in the judiciary that the president is observing on. But you don't present this as if you are in a position to give a marching order to the judiciary. Because you are not. This is a democracy. That's where the problem is. Now, what President Tinubu has said, as a matter of fact, is that he's already telling Nigerians that he will not obey certain orders.
He calls them illegal orders.
That's what I'm saying. That means he believes that some of these orders are illegal. But the question remains, is the president in a position to determine an order that is illegal? Is it that will tantamount to, what I may call violation or violating another arm of government? He is bringing them under unnecessary pressure. Do you understand what I'm saying? For me, it's a threat. And it's a red flag pointing to the fact that he's not going to obey orders he doesn't consider legal. Do you get what I'm saying? But you see, if he wants, if he wants order or certain orders that are, they shouldn't be, he shouldn't say they are illegal. He can talk about frivolity, frivolous orders. Do you understand what I'm saying? A frivolous order, it may be frivolous, flimsy, but not necessarily illegal. Because he is now directly accusing the judiciary of committing illegality by the kind of orders they issue. So why don't we find a way around it? Like I said, do something about the practice direction. Amending the act, certain, some of the laws that govern, the legal framework of our judicial system itself. So, for example, there is what you call subject matter jurisdiction and the territorial jurisdiction. We see, they will tell you that a high court is a high court. So you have a problem in Oka, in Anambra, and you go to Sokoto to get an order, because the high court there is also a high court. These are, some of the things I think, should be addressed through the practice direction, through amending the practice act itself, so that, the territory will be defined. Do you understand what I'm saying? In criminal matters, for example, if you commit a crime in Abuja, you cannot be tried in Lagos. It has to be here. Civil matters should be like that as well, as far as I am concerned. Because if you make it that way, the territory will be defined. So where the individual who is trying to vent his own grievance, right, through the legal process, should not leave his state. For example, why should he leave his state and go? I know of cases, originating from the east, but brought to this Abuja. Some take it to Sokoto, some to Kano, to get orders. So such orders are frivolous. I agree with the president to that extent, but I do not think that they are illegal, because the practice direction allows it. If he allows it, what you have to do is to deal with it. So
first of all, you must obey before you...
Yes, you need to amend. A law is a law, no matter how obnoxious, until you change it. That's how it is. So what the president needs to do is not to issue threats to to another arm of government. Is to work to change what has brought about, what he considers an illegality in quote. For me, frivolity. That is what is at issue here. And that is what the president should really focus more on. It's not something that they can do using executive fiat, because the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended will not allow him to do that. If he does so and is challenged in court, it will fail.
Right. Let's quickly talk about, a little bit more about his speech there, where he spoke to Nigerians, saying that they will reap the benefits of, or the dividends of democracy, and that particularly on this forced subsidy removal issue, that he knows or he empathizes with the pain of Nigerians, but they will have to sacrifice a little more. I'm wondering, how do you think we can get to the point where it seems as though the sacrifice is two-way, or how do you think the government can demonstrate that?
Over time, I have come to, see and believe that pauperization has been adopted as an official policy of government in Nigeria. Pauperize your people. make them too poor and too weak to be able to do anything. You can't tell Nigerians to sacrifice more when you are not addressing the looters, the people who are holding the funds. I read a piece written a day or two ago by Femi Falana's son. Femi Falana sat down and chronicled corruption and corrupt practices in Nigeria, both in policies and in their implementations, and actual direct stealing. He chronicled them. About 15, perhaps more. I looked at the total amount, over 100 trillion naira. What stops the president from constituting an international forensic audit to verify because Falana gave he was very graphic. Out of the 15 issues he raised, 2-3 of them proved can give Tinubu access to 10 trillion naira. And where the monies are, they are clearly stated there. But he's not looking in that direction. He is telling Nigerians to be ready to sacrifice more. And they will reap the reward in investment, in transportation, investment. The major oil marketers promised 100 buses. For who? Lagos alone, that cannot even scratch the problem of transportation in Lagos. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, if Nigerians will have to wait until such investments are made, there will be what you call gestation period, which may linger for up to 2 to 3 years. Nigerians, will they be alive till that time? The president needs to ask himself that question. If he's not prepared to go after these people, then he's not prepared to rule. He is not prepared to succeed. Because these are the people holding the money. Take, for instance, the case of Hadi Sarika. Hadi Sarika deployed over 600 billion naira for setting up of Nigeria Air. Till today, not a single aircraft purchased. Where is the money? To what has the money gone to? Do you understand what I'm saying? To what has the money gone? The president ought to be asking the right questions. Yes, he has gone after Emefiele, Godwin Emefiele, right? It's been picked up by DSS and all that. For me, I don't know precisely why is DSS that is going for, if the problem is an economic crime. Is it not supposed to be EFCC or ICPC?
They say there are allegations of terrorism financing.
For me, what we need is the money first, before we begin to look in that direction.
But isn't this another case of not following due process? At the end of the day, even if there are good intentions, if the wrong method has been followed, because the Constitution does not allow for, the Constitution says removal, and people are saying suspension is not removal, but still, it's still the same thing in the end. So
no, it's not exactly the same thing. You see, let me tell you, the law, where it does not expressly forbid a particular action, if you take some administrative actions, do you understand what I'm saying? You may not have actually violated any law. The president didn't say he has sacked Emefiele. He didn't say so. So I believe he's still within the law.
But using precedents, at least I remember, I think it was the Federal High Court that ruled during the Sanusi period that the president should be able to punish the CBN governor when found wanting. But the clause was that he has to be found wanting. I believe at the time, I can't recall the name of the body, the apex body that deals with financial issues.
Yeah,
actually
indicted. There's a council.
Yes, they indicted Sanusi and even, I think a one or two, or if not all of his deputy, governors. So we've not seen that in this dispensation.
Yeah.
We just have word of mouth that he might have done something wrong.
That is why I said that, you know, the intention of the president may be more political. Do you understand what I'm saying? It may be a political move to get at Emefiele, and not necessarily because of the need to deal with the mess, you know, in the sector.
Just quickly, I know two wrongs don't make it right.
I agree.
But do you think the CBN governor himself, you know, displaying certain characteristics that seemed as though he wasn't respecting his office or going outside the purpose of his office, could that also be what led to this? Take, for instance, officially, you know, we can't say that the CBN governor, Emefiele, suspended CBN governor, actually wanted to run for office. But all the signs indicated that there were movements to that regard.
No.
But he can say it was not official. He came out to deny it.
Wait, forget about the denial. Do you understand what I'm saying? You and I saw buses, you know, Sienna, over 100 Sienna, painted for his rolling out. And he actually went to court to seek interpretation or whether or not, you know, he as CBN governor didn't have the right to run for president. If he was not running, why go to court? Do you understand what I'm saying? The intention is there. You know, what you call mens rea in law. You know, actus reus, maybe he has not purchased any form, but he was seeking legal leeway to enable him to purchase forms. So I don't believe that Emefiele was not running. He went beyond science. We saw things, actions he took in that direction. And Emefiele could possibly be one CBN, you know, central bank governor anywhere in the world that ran for the office of the president while in office. The office, you know, you are the head of the monetary policies. The CBN is shielded from politics. Because if you have to implement the monetary policies, you know, from the prism of politics, you will not get it right. And that is why most of his interventions were political and ended in fiasco. That's a fact. He was too political for that office. The office is so how do I put it now? Subservient. It's so subdued, so conservative. It's not an office. The CBN governor should not even be seen. He works quietly to stabilize the economy through sound, you know, sure-footed economic policies. You are the driver of the monetary policies of government. And that is why the monetary, you know, dimension of the economy is separated from the fiscal dimension. The person that can afford to play politics is the Minister of Finance. Do you understand what I'm saying? Not the CBN governor. So CBN under Emefiele was actually a disaster. There's no doubt about it. You know, he dabbled too much into fiscal policies. He was throwing money at problems. You know, billions at problems. Okay, you are the one in charge of the monetary policy of government, and you gave the same government an overdraft of 22 trillion. That has never happened. So what shows his competence?
All right. So
he met 1 minute. You met the naira at 167, and you left it at almost 800. And you used trillions to defend naira. Do you understand what I'm saying? You know, I'm not an economist, but I believe that but I'm a social scientist. I don't see how those policies of Emefiele could have worked. And look at where we are.
All right, so we've run out of time now. So I really like to get your final words in about a minute or two to Nigerians now. They say democracy is a government for the people, by the people, and of the people. Yeah. So what do you say to the people now? Well, what can they do?
My dear Nigerians, My candid advice is we're all in this together. Like I said before, democracy is work in progress. We have all seen what went wrong. We have to go for reforms to ensure that we provide consequences and provide additional reforms that will ensure a better outcome next time. As long as there are no consequences for deviating from the extant laws, the 2027 election may even be worse than what you have now. And to government, I say, look, go after the people with our money. Do you understand that? Nigerians are already suffering. Nigerians have already taken the fuel subsidy. Labour said they are no longer fighting for reversal, and I agree with Labour. There's no need to reverse anything. Let's face this once and for all. Do you get the point? Nigerians have already started facing it. Even some state governors have started adjusting working hours and the number of days people, civil servants will have to report, for work. Some 4 days, some 3 days now. School days are also going to change. It has changed. So, these are realities of our time. If you go to the roads, they are practically empty. You go to the filling stations, they are practically empty. Nigerians can't afford 500 naira a litre. That is the reality. But there is no money to continue subsidy. That's why we are saying the president go after the people that have our money. You need to probe the Buhari administration.
All right.
With a view to recovering our money. We know where the money is, and the Falana has done the job of doing the first research, pointing to 15 areas where over 100 trillion naira can be found.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Law, for coming. It's always a pleasure hearing you speak. Thanks for
My
coming.
pleasure also.
All right. That's all we'll take on this segment of the program. We'll go on a break. When we return, I'll be back to continue to discuss on Democracy Day and the lessons learned after decades of Nigeria's democracy. Stay with us. We'll be right back.